All right, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to discuss the top three ways to buy co-living properties. One of those involves DSCRs. And Fernando here, we've worked with him before, worked out great. And we just want to talk about not only what's happening in the co-living DSCR space, but maybe some future things about how, where we see it going, how it's going to potentially evolve one direction or the other. Fernando, you're one of the more well-known co-living DSCR providers that I'm aware of. When did you start like that, like ultra narrow focus on that
Yeah,
product?
thanks, man. So I've only been in the business for 2 years in mortgage lending, but I was a PadSplit investor for the last five. So since 2020, I think funny enough, if you have to solve your own problems, then you realize that like, whoa, I solve my own problems. Like, how do I solve other people's problems and monetize? And it's just because different people needed help. So yeah, 5 years ago, I got my first one. And then 3 years ago, I bought three in 1 year. But the way that I had to buy the last two was DSCR loans. And the current brokers that I worked with just didn't understand the model. Probably the same thing everybody runs into. You have to like explain what the model is. They have to go and try to pitch it to different lenders. It's not really going well. You're trying to figure out, do I add the rooms and then refinance? Can I buy an occupied pad split? So there's all these problems that you're trying to solve. And I ended up solving it myself. And that's when I was like, I think there's something here. And I saw pad split was really starting to expand and grow. So I kind of jumped on the coattails. So yeah, 2 years ago, I said, all right, I'm going to start my mortgage brokerage. And I connected with one of the account executives, Blake Lewis. She was my AE there at PadSplit. And she was like, yeah, let's send out a newsletter. Like, let's just say you can help people with these things. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And that's kind of where things started to take off.
So after the deal closes, DSCR goes through. Who's holding these notes? Is it
Mhm.
private groups of people? Is it
Yeah.
bigger than that? Like who ultimately is holding this DSCR note when it's all said and done?
So right now, yeah, it's not like your conventional Fannie Freddie government style like backed loans. This is going to be life insurance companies or it's going to be hedge funds that have significant capital. So right now we're partnering with like a Chinese backed hedge fund, and you don't know exactly the name of the hedge fund because that's
Yeah.
like their contact. So a lot of these lenders are trying to protect their think about like supply, right? The suppliers like, oh, that's my supplier. And they're like, I don't want to share who my supplier is. So they don't give us the actual names
Yeah.
of who's on the back end, who they sell them to. But yeah, it could be even Bank of America or Chase, like these bigger banks will also buy small percentages of these DSCR loans. So because the DSCR loans are, typically a little bit higher on the interest rate than their conventional stuff that they're doing. But yeah, that's who's buying them.
Okay. And that's when you say those people, is that kind of in general all DSCRs, or who would you say is more so buying these co-living DSCRs?
Yeah, the co-living DSCRs, that becomes very niche.
Yeah.
So just like I'm going to different lenders and trying to get the different lenders to understand the product so that they can go to their different buyers of the notes. So
Mm.
they have multiple investors, and there's two layers of investor here of the word, just to be clear. Like there's real estate investor, that's the current user, right, of the loan products, but there's also the investor that buys the notes. So that's on the secondary market, right? So we'll call it the secondary investor or something. So when I talk about the lenders working with the secondary investors, they have many secondary investors that they're selling the loans to, and they then have to pitch the co-living or pad split products to their secondary investors. And so it is very niche. You usually find like I do have four products, like four lenders that I can go to that can handle the pad split product. One of those lenders is so massive in terms of how much money they have. They keep all of their loans. They don't sell it at
Mm.
all. I don't know who backs them. I don't,
Yeah.
but
More
they
so,
keep
yeah.
good.
I'm
That's
also
what,
curious, like if it's at Blackstone level or if it's still in these smaller pockets or like kind of the degree. Because I'm more so asking because it'll tell me how the big finance world is
yeah.
starting to look at co-living.
Man, I don't know the answer to that one because I think we're barely starting to like scratch the surface with how many loans we're even doing that are actually called co-living, right?
Yeah.
If they're doing hundreds of millions a year, a month, across the U.S. and in the co-living world, where they're collectively, I'm sure between me and some like other brokers, maybe it's 10 million. And
Mm.
so I think you don't need that huge monster yet.
Yeah.
You need the people in the niches. So, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how big. the secondary investor is.
So you obviously saw co-living as an opportunity 5 years ago. I did as well, as more so I lived in it, like during undergrad, college, super common.
Right.
Lived in 5 different co-living properties, even in different countries. And that's what brought me into it. I was like, all right, there's a strong demand for this. And then my background, though, my master's degree is finance, and that's when it really clicked. And you see the government's just printing more and more money, not just the US, all these other countries.
Yeah.
Inflation, it's making it harder for people to afford housing, not just buy housing, but even rent. And so
Yep.
between those two, living in it and then studying it, it's like, wow, co-living is here not just to stay, but to significantly grow. So I guess that brings me to, so 5 years ago, you jumped in. Now all you do now is provide loan products. Well, not all,
Yeah.
but a big chunk of your business. What do you see maybe 3 years from now, 5, 10 years? Like, where do you see co-living going in general? And then maybe after that, we could dive into the lending side.
Yeah. So I think so in general, my perspective has actually shifted. Well, because of also how before the goal, I mean, I'm going to say we thought, right? 5 years ago was that PadSplit are co-living people that go and live there. They want to stay there only for like 6 to 9 months. And then they want to go find a place of their own, right? It's like this transient transfer. You're only going to keep them for a little while and then go there. But I've actually had one tenant or member, right? However they want to call it, in one of my properties for 4 years. And I was like, and this person's like the best tenant ever, right? And I'll just use the word tenant, but even though we know it's like members and everything. So I think I started thinking like, okay, what's the future going to look like? Future of co-living. Is it really just create as many rooms as you can in a house? Or how do you keep people there for 4 years? And so, well, I'm curious to get your answer. I'll share what I think it is, but how would you think it would be like? How would you plan to keep somebody in your co-living property for 4 years? How do you keep a co-living property filled for that long?
Yeah. Well, the ones that I lived in that had the most, I guess you could say, harmony in the house,
Yeah, that was a big one.
the members have influence on who gets to move in. I don't know how to do that in a scalable way quite yet. But
Yeah.
I do remember like when we got to pick who, like, assuming there's variety of options, when we had a significant influence on that next person coming in, it helped tremendously. Like,
Cool.
and I went to an LDS undergrad school, BYU Hawaii. So they're not even drinking, they're not even partying, and it still mattered. And so I've lived in a variety of co-living, but I can't say that was the number one factor. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, I would say based off of that interaction that I had with that gentleman, he's an older guy. Maybe he's like in his 50s. He worked at DHL. He's been there for years. But when I went to the house to visit this is in Atlanta. I want to go visit my house. And this guy's like in the front yard on the driveway, like picking up the leaves from the tree. And in my head, I was like, that's interesting. So I think it comes down to similar to what you probably would say. If I were to bucket it, it's ownership. How do you get these members or tenants to feel like they have some level of ownership in the property, right?
Mhm.
Not equity, but more like just like accountability of that. And so I think the future in the management side is going to be the leaders, like the property managers are not property managers. They're going to be like people managers or like leaders of the whole properties to help them feel like they have ownership in the property. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of those are the properties that are going to do really well to create like a true community that they have some ownership in the property. So the barrier to exit is really high, instead of the barrier to exit being very low, where they're like, oh, I can just go to another house whenever I want. It's like, yeah, you can, but you're not going to have the strong connectedness, harmony, like you talked about, right? You're not going to have the same level of ownership and accountability and responsibility that you do here at this house.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Like, basically boils down to the people living in it. They feel like they have a higher degree of control, a higher level of
Totally.
influence on just, how their life is. Okay.
Yeah, I agree
I
with
can
that.
see that. So do you see, I don't know what the metric is, but I do know there's a lot of official co-living units. Let's just reference PadSplit in the US right now. Like maybe percentiles, or if there's a specific number, where do you see it going just kind of 5 years from now?
Man, I think that's only been around for like 7 years, I think 7 or 8 years. And I think now, man, 100,000. I think PadSplit knows the metrics better than I do, right? But something like they're adding a certain amount of doors per per month. It's like, it was pretty crazy, like a pretty crazy amount.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
maybe like a percent. My guess is I think within 5 years, PadSplit units total, I think will easily double. Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know, but I think
yeah,
that's a reasonable,
I think so. I think more too. I think that the more is definitely possible because at the rate that they're growing, and, and they're raising capital, they're getting bigger names to join their movement as well, like bigger influencers, not only real estate influencers, but just like regular
Mark
people
Cuban, I
influencers.
think.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
they just when you start getting these like other influencers to start coming in and just start getting the awareness out there, then it makes things a lot easier. And then hopefully that also makes getting lending easier too when you get to that level. Because more people will
Yeah.
be on a mission to solve the lending problem than me and a few other brokers.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we've done a deal together. It was an existing pad split and we used Coliving DSCR. Where do you see in the next 5 years that product
Lending.
changing or evolving? Maybe it's because right now, maybe we just fully identify how it works now, but
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, it's using single family comps.
Right. For value.
So
Yeah.
identifying sales comps, just like another regular single family house. It's not quite taking in consideration income. What do you see the pros and cons of that currently?
Yeah. So there's on every appraisal for an investment property, there's actually two reports. The one report is the value report, and that's the one that you're referencing. Like, is the value of the home based on sales comps? Like, did another property like this sell, and therefore the value of this is based off of that? That's a sales comparison approach. And then the question comes up where it's like, well, can the value of the home be based on an income approach where the property generates a certain amount of income? So it's like a cap rate type of deal, right? I think we talked about that just before. So that's one report that we get, which is just the value, like a value report. But there's another report that the appraisal that we all get. It's called the market rent analysis report. And that's what gives us like, well, they look at comps as well, and they look at what the market rents would be. We do need both of those right now in order to accurately do a DSCR loan because we're using the income, if it's a vacant property for your deal. So let's start there. Where like, before I get to the value piece, I'd like to talk about the rental analysis report, if that's right. Just because that, I think we're going to start there before we get lenders that are like, yeah, let's value the property more because of the income it produces. Before we get there, I think the next level is going to be lenders say, to buy this property 20% down. Before, like I know for yours, I think we had to go 25% down for that specific lender. And we could only use the market rent. Even though it was an occupied and cash flowing pad split, we could only use the regular long-term market rents as if it was for a single family home. Right. Yeah. And I was bummed out about that. Right. And that would impact if we can go 20% down. Right. Because DSCR loans, as long as we're at a 1.0, as long as the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, the monthly debt is equal to, the market rent on that report, then we can do the deal. The problem is when you go 20% down, now your PITI can go a little higher than what that long-term market rents are. And so then we're like, shoot, well, now we have to go 25% down. We can't go 20% down. What I just told you about, we have a lender as of July 11th, 2025, where we can, if the pad split or the co-living property that has a master lease, that's the critical part, that there does need to be a master lease in place, even if the master lease is with PadSplit, so it can be a corporate rental type lease. If we have 3 months of documented history, then we can take those months, and that helps us increase the single family home market rents. We can increase that now so we can buy the property 20% down, or we can do a refinance with that too. So if the property's been operating for at least 3 months, we have 3 months history, we can now do a refinance, and that income helps us do the refi or the purchase. So I think that's already the next level. That's what I've been trying to solve first. I've got 2 lenders that have pretty much committed to that, and I'm closing my first 10 loans with one of those lenders this month or next month. And I think that's just the first next step of evolution. I think more lenders will start to adopt that co-living style income. But to be clear, I think that's going to be at the master lease level. I do have some other co-living investors that are like, oh, I got 13 leases. That's a lot harder. Because then now they have to sell. When I talk to my lender and the lender talks to their secondary investor, they now have to sell the 13 leases concept versus the way I'm currently selling it is it's a corporate rental. It's a corporate rental with one 12-month master lease because that's what PadSplit provides, right? And it's not it's not a rent by the room necessarily. It's that we we sign a lease with a master lease with a corporate entity, and they are allowed to sublet rooms. That's the current agreement. So that's the way that we've been able to get these through and be good.
Yeah. So the 3 months of revenue, is that like purely gross revenue? It's no
Yep.
fees at
Yep.
all, like
It's
PadSplit fees.
gross.
Okay.
Gross,
Okay.
gross. You got it.
Yeah.
So
So that
that's the first level of evolution. But go ahead. I can go into the like more evolutions as well. I know
yeah,
so we
no, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, okay, that's the first domino.
yes, first
Let's
domino.
say in 12 months that becomes so much more accepted. What do you
Big time.
see phase two or the second domino being?
Yeah, so the second domino is, let's see, for what I would want the second domino to be projected. That would be sick. So projected meaning like right now, I can buy a vacant property that has no Airbnb history. Okay. I can buy that using projected AirDNA income, just the data that reports on AirDNA. So my hope is that you have these like PadSplits or like other co-living platforms that start to make their data more public, and accessible to lenders. And so that the brokers and the lenders can use projected, like, oh, okay, based off the data of the PadSplit area, we can take projected income for this property and use that to help us buy real estate. That'd be
Yeah,
sick.
and it seems completely reasonable. I mean, Airbnb it's not a necessity. It's a luxury, so I don't see any reason why it wouldn't happen in co-living.
Yeah. And
Okay.
again, like even if the property is totally vacant, even if it doesn't, like if it's an Airbnb, um, we can use AirDNA, even if the other properties have jacuzzis and pickleball courts and all this stuff, right? And you're just buying like a vacant regular property, they'll still
Mm,
use the other comps. And so like blows my mind in a good way, because that's where I would want PadSplit to go, or the, co-living PadSplit products. That's
yeah.
kind of the next level. Okay. So that's the next level. Cool. All right. Then now once we can master those two, the value is still the same. So at those two levels, the value of the home is still based off of sales comps. And that's still true, by the way, with Airbnb. Right? Like when somebody goes to buy an Airbnb property, whether it's 1 to 4 units, usually in the residential space, the value of the home is still the value of the home based off of sales comps. Just because the Airbnb has produced significantly more income doesn't mean that you can get more value on that property, right? On the income approach. So, okay. So now we'll get into the pros and cons of if you did have an income approach. So we're good on the market rents report side of those two layers. Now we'll get into, yeah, where do I see the values adjusting, if ever, in the future? Is that right? Cool. So we'll get into the pros and cons. So pros are easy, right? Bias for if you're an investor, you come in and you increase the rents by like 2 or 3x, then we should all be rewarded so that we can get a higher value because the income is significantly higher. And so that allows us to get into properties, rehab them, convert them, stabilize them, get the income, get the income higher, which we would hope would increase the value of the home so we can refinance. Yes, that's kind of we understand that. And we can take out all of our capital, rinse and repeat. Just go do this all over again. And it's just easier to do this basically the BRRRR strategy, right? It's easier to do that BRRRR style strategy, but you can do it on homes that are already in good condition. You can take a home that's worth 300 grand. You go in, you renovate it, you do all that stuff, you convert it, but it's already in good condition, and you just increase the rents, which could increase the value. That's one big pro. Do you have any other pros on that, by the way? Like that being the biggest pro. Would you say anything else you
It's
want
the
to?
biggest. Yeah, I mean, it frees up the capital. I guess, looking at it purely from the buy side,
Yeah.
it does add much more value add than just single family comps.
Yeah.
And then, 12-month rental as using that as the ratio. Yeah, I think it really just boils down to that. It's, what my exit could be, whether it's a strong refi or, selling it to another buyer at that new valuation.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So those would be the pros. The cons, and so this is where I like to look at what has worked before, and I'm trying to think now. So we're thinking in the terms of the buyer, or of the first level real estate investor, right? But now if we think about the lender and the lender's problems, again, I would ask the question like, well, why don't current lenders do that for Airbnbs? Like, why haven't they done that? If Airbnb has stabilized, why haven't they done that? And it goes back going into the cons, there's a supply and demand. If you look at 1 to 4 unit is considered residential, right? That you can buy 1 to 4 units with FHA loans, with conventional loans, 3.5% down. You can buy them with VA loans, 0% down. So that's the 1 to 4 unit space. Once you get into the 5 unit and over, you're all commercial. You can't use any of the Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA loans on any of the 5 unit plus. So we're looking at supply and demand. Once you enter the 5 unit plus, your demand is only investors. You follow what I'm saying? It's only investors. And so then the lenders that are lending here, they know that the market that they're selling to is 100% investors. Okay, now go back to the 1 to 4 unit. Those lenders that are in the 1 to 4 unit space, the majority of their market are single family buyers or just regular income buyers. I think in the 1 to 4 unit space, maybe 20% of the purchases and stuff like that is investors, but the other 80% are just regular buyers, home buyers. So therefore the supply and demand isn't skewed in the investor's favor for the lender to say, I'm going to create a product that only targets the investors in the 1 to 4 unit space. Because then if they do that, then that removes their possibility, their different exit strategy. We all talk about exit strategies. If that lender cannot exit that property to the other 80%, then they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, right? Because now let's hypothetically say they did give us that higher value, you default, right? Or we default, the investor defaults on that product. Now they have to offload that property. They got to exit. Who do they exit to? They can try to go back to that 20%, but then now they can't exit to the 80 with that product because now the lender's so underwater. If they try to exit to the other 80% of just regular residential buyers, but they just gave you a loan at $500,000, but if they try to sell it to just a regular family or whatever, VA, FHA, those other products, the home's going to go back to the sales comparison approach, and it's only going to be worth 300. So that's kind of where. So those are the cons. How do I think we could overcome that? Or how do I think in some far future the lenders can overcome it? Or even us as investors? It's like I was telling you, if you start to package them together, if you package 10 of these co-living homes together or more, now you have a product that only investors will buy. And now you can take that to the lender and say, hey, this is my portfolio of products. It generates this much income. I'd like to get a valuation like this so I can refinance. And then that lender knows that, in the future, they can take this package of portfolio product, and they could resell that to an investor.
Yeah. So the person or, the group or entity buying these packages of 10, let's say, for example, we're doing a few 10 bed, 10 baths right now. And
yeah.
So maybe what I'm hearing is 10 of those, the investor is big enough. There's enough, that's that group, that buyer pool is big enough to where it does look attractive to them in these packages where it's seasoned, it has data.
Right.
Let's call it like a T12. So you're saying that's potentially the group that would be interested in it.
Yeah. Yes, I do. And the reason I say that is because right now there are those commercial lenders that'll take a strip mall paired with 5 single family homes paired with, a nail salon that has an apartment studio in the back. They'll look at all that and based off the income approach. And so that's kind of where my head goes.
So what are the different types of products? Let's just, pretend we're 5 years from now and this is where it's at. Pretty comfortable. Let's say even 5 houses, they're 10 beds, 10 baths. How long do you see those loans being? What type of amortization schedule? What do you see those? Are there different versions you see?
Yeah. So amortization, just to clearly define it, it just means if you have $100,000 note, how many years is it divided against? If you think about $100,000 divided by, if the amortization was only 10 years, well, then that's $10,000 a year that you would have to be paying. Right. And just to put it simply.
Normal residential being, the 30
right.
years.
But if your amortization is 30 years, well, then it's 100,000 divided by 30, which means your monthly payments are a lot smaller. So that's why the 30-year note was created, to make your monthly payments smaller. So when we ask the question, well, what do I think the amortization schedule is? I don't even know the full reason why, but lenders right now typically are doing 20 to 25 year amortization schedules. And so it makes the monthly payment higher. Like if I look at just commercial lending in general, in the commercial world, it's rare to see a 30-year amortization. I don't know the answer as to why, but
Yeah.
that's
Do
just
do you see any that are like, interest only a few years and then transition to the 20 or 25?
yes, I do see that. I do see where it's interest only for 5 to 10 years. For sure. Now, that leads me to my next question. Almost all of the commercial loan products are, and I say almost all because I haven't analyzed every single one, but almost all meaning a lot of the ones that I've looked at, they have balloons. And so
Mm-hmm.
a balloon is cool. We're going to put you in this loan and it's a 25-year, it's amortized over 25 years, but you're going to have to pay back the loan in 5 years or in 7 years or in 10 years, right? Like there's some type of balloon on that says you have to refinance or sell this property. Somehow you have to pay this off in the next 5 to 10 years. Again, I don't even, it's kind of, that part sucks because so many multifamily properties that got in when rates were like 2 or 3% because their monthly payment was so low that gave them this massive valuation. And all those people captured that equity. I think a lot of those people that over leveraged thought the music was never going to stop. They over leveraged at that point when rates were low. Rates now doubled. And now their cap rate, if they didn't double their income, then their cap rate got cut. And so that means that now when they go to refinance or sell, they're underwater. And that's the only other con that I wanted to share. That like if we did get to that level, or if somebody did want to go the commercial route, they just have to be aware that you could, of that, the risk. If you do over leverage, then you could be caught down the line having to pay back a note that you don't have the equity for. So I think that's a
So
possible con.
do you see, I guess two questions. If we're
Yeah.
buying at single family prices still, and then, the valuation, the income model is dramatically different, do you see that could potentially be enough equity where it cushions? And then I guess more importantly, this second question though,
Yeah.
I've wholesaled before I was deep into co-living. I wholesaled a good amount, and I didn't see many of these, but I did see a few. I would wholesale sub two deals, but I saw a handful that had SBA loans. Do you
Mhm.
see co-living and then any SBA products kind of like coming together?
Man, that'd be cool. SBA has their own rules and guidelines. SBA, man, it's possible. That would be cool. I don't know, man. That would be pretty nice though, because now you're operating it at if you could position it, and maybe that's somebody listening might take that and run with it, and they might go to all these different lenders and go a different route than I went. They might say, yeah, this is a business. Well, let's go
Mm-hmm.
pitch it as a business on real estate. So right now, the SBA does finance assisted living facilities. Like if you wanted to go buy an assisted living facility and the real estate, you can do an SBA loan, right? So somebody had to pitch assisted living facilities as a business, like, and somebody
Yep.
had to go to the SBA to create that product. So I think it's possible, man.
Yeah, when I was wholesaling, I think I saw two of these. I found them myself, my own marketing, where the underlying note, it was an SBA and it was a regular rental. I don't know how they did it. I have no clue, honestly. But it was enough for me to remember and be like, all right, I need to put this
Something here.
somewhere on the bookshelf. Like, remember this.
Weird way. Do you remember when the note was recorded?
If I
If you
did some
dig,
digging into my email, I could find it.
I
I
don't know.
might,
I
but
know the SBA has always wanted to help.
it was less than 5 years. I know that. It was after COVID.
Dude, I think it'd be great if we could reach out to the homeowner, if you're the seller, right? Who that person was, and say, how did you do that?
How'd you pull this off? Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
cool. But I like where your head's going with that. I think that's the type of creativity. Even right now, like there's things I can't even think of just because it's so new that somebody else listening might, just like what you're saying too, somebody else might think of a different way to solve this problem than in the conventional way. And I would like that way, the SBA way, because then now you're treating it like a business.
Hmm.
You're not treating it like a commercial property. And I think that's a better way to go, because now it's
Yeah,
about,
because it was 30 years, the note.
yeah, I think that would be better. Okay, just from this conversation, I think the future would be really cool if PadSplit was treated like a true business, like an assisted living facility or sober living facility, right? That's what I would say would be really cool. And then that would take it away from commercial. You wouldn't have these balloon notes, and there wouldn't be like potential predatory lending on the unsophisticated borrower. You'd have to go through like true SBA guidelines and, those types of lenders. I think that'd be cool. You got me excited. Like that would be really cool.
Yeah, I guess then last question, and I'm definitely biased because I want this outcome, but do you see out of all the stuff we've talked about, within 5 years, there's maybe a perfect happy medium of all those, characteristics where it's like we get the valuation based on income, we get a 30-year note, and there's no balloon. Like, do you see any possibilities that there's a product like that in 5 years?
Man, I think that's the SBA loan, right? Like that product, it can be like that. And so it's somebody who's willing to pioneer and trying. And so, dude, if it's in your vision of what can possibly be created, it just takes, like, for me, when I had the vision of how I wanted these co-living products to be created, I just went out and pitched it. Like, I'm literally taking appraisals, I'm like going to lenders, sending them contracts, sending them leases, sending them, like, I'm meeting with PadSplit's legal team today to talk about possibly restructuring the contracts to fit a lender's requirements and stuff, right? So it just takes somebody who's willing to really dig in and spend so many hours every day to try to solve the problem. But that's where it starts, man. It starts with the vision of what we wish can be created and somebody being willing to solve it. And I'm open. I mean, I'm up for the challenge. After I get to these first 2 layers of challenge, that would probably be my 3rd layer of challenge for sure to solve.
Phase 3. Yeah, maybe we'll have to do in like 6 months or something a follow up. Maybe we can track the evolution of co-living
The
lending.
progress. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Definitely appreciate you joining. Anyone that wants to reach out to you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, at Instagram, at it's Fernando Corona. So at ITS, it's Fernando Corona. And that's probably the best way to just start connecting with me, seeing what I'm doing and tracking what I'm up to. And then if you want to reach out, if you have any inquiries, then just shoot us an email, fernando@myremotelender.com. The name of the company is called Remote Lender, and we're starting to grow. We actually got some loan officers that are actually a part of the brokerage now. And
nice.
that's actually really cool. That's really humbling to start to grow a company and people want to be a part of. So thanks, everybody. And thanks, Dustin, for having me on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hit them up.